This happened to me a couple weeks ago, but I decided to share it now. I'm a 19-year-old female college student. I work part-time in a grocery store, and at the time that this event happened, I was doing the closing shifts, which was from 7 p.m. to 12 a.m. The first 2 hours were pretty normal and went without any trouble. Around 9 p.m., the store was pretty dead, so my manager told me to close my register and gave me a cart full of returns to do. I was halfway done with the cart and was on my way to put back some toilet paper. Some quick information about the layout of the store. The registers are all very close, and there are 2 entrances at both sides of the registers. The cleaning supplies, pet food, and frozen aisles are located to the far left, where there are no entrances, and you can't see anything from the registers. It's the perfect place to take out your phone and text your friends without getting caught by the managers. Anyway, the toilet paper was at the end, and I headed there, but made a quick stop to put some body wash 2 aisles before the toilet paper. I felt someone walking behind me, so I turned around and saw a tall black man behind me. He just looked at me while I put the body wash on the shelf. I didn't think anything of it at first, because I thought he was just waiting for me to move out of the way so he could browse through the body wash. I quickly finished putting them back and headed to the next aisle with my cart. I didn't look back, but I could feel him walking behind me. I proceeded to turn to the next aisle to finally put back the toilet paper, and after I did, I turned around and saw that he was just staring at me. I politely asked him if he needed anything. He shook his head. "No, I was just following you, because you're very pretty. Do you have a boyfriend?" I was kind of creeped out, and I didn't have a boyfriend, but something told me to say yes. So I said, "Thank you, but I have a boyfriend." He stopped smiling and then asked me if my relationship was serious, and I said yes. He then just said, "Well, I'll see you around," and he turned around and left. I was really freaked out, and I asked my manager if I could take my break because I didn't want to do returns while the guy was still in the store. So, 15 minutes passed, and I went back down, looked around, and thought the man had left. My manager sent me back to my register because we had a couple lines. Around 11:30 p.m., I look up and see the man walking towards the registers. I try to hide and usher a woman with 2 full carts to come in my lane, and she does. I look up again and lock eyes with the guy. He proceeds to hurry to my line, and he only had 3 items, so the lady with the 2 carts lets him go in front. I greet him since it's part of my job, and my manager was around. I asked him for his reward card, and I scanned his things. His total was around $12, and when he opened his wallet, I saw that he had a couple 20s, 10s, and some 100s. Normally people would give me a 20, since it's the closest to his total, but he pulls out 100 and gives it to me while winking. I give him his change back, and he just looks at my name tag and says, "Good night, beautiful." Once I see him leave, I let out a deep breath, keep on with my job. So at 12, I turn my till in, say goodnight to my manager, and head out to my car. I'm generally a paranoid person, so I lock my doors as soon as I'm inside the car. I turn it on and wait for it to warm up since it was cold outside. I look at my phone, and out of nowhere I decide to look up, and when I do, I see the same guy jogging towards me. He was halfway through, and I immediately back up and start heading out of the parking lot. He then runs back to his car and starts following me. I stop at the light right as I exit the parking lot, and he gets extremely close to my car. I couldn't even see his headlights. I then start driving and make a wrong turn to see if he was following me. He proceeds to make the next 5 turns as me, and I'm convinced that he was following me. I decide to go back to the main road, and he follows. As soon as I'm back on the main road, I try to think of what to do. So, I call my mom, and I'm on the phone crying before I see blue and red lights behind me. I pull to the side and see a cop car behind me. I roll down my window, and the cop proceeds to tell me that I was driving without lights on. I was in such a rush to get out of that parking lot that I forgot to turn on my lights of the car. He asks for my license and registration and goes to his car to check them. I see the same guy that was following me drive past me and park about 25 meters in front of me. The cop then comes back and gives me my things and just tells me to turn on my lights and be more careful. He then asks if I'm okay, and I tell him that the car in front has been following me since I got out of work. He then tells me that he'll take a look at the license plate of the car, and then told me to speed up a little above the speed limit, and that if the car catches my speed, then he'll stop him. The cop then gives me his number, and to call him and let him know when I arrived home. I did what he told me, and the car also followed at the same speed, so the cop stops him, and I continue driving home. I get home and quickly get inside my house and put the alarm on. I call a cop and let him know that I arrived safely. He then lets me know that he gave the guy a ticket and they'll keep tabs on him for a while. I thank him, and I haven't seen the guy again or received any information from the police. When I was in college, I worked the night shift one summer vacation. I was 19 years old and an average-looking female. I wasn't enthused about having to work a job over the summer, but it was the only way I was going to be able to afford my tuition. Working the night shift was probably the weirdest experience of my life. It was at the McDonald's drive-thru. I still remember my first night on the job. This lady came in and was talking to someone while she was waiting for us to take her order. She sounded extremely upset and she was screaming at the top of her lungs. It sounded like it was directed at someone in the back seat. I immediately assumed that she was abusing her children. I'm a psychology major, so I naturally pick up on stuff like that. She ordered 3 Big Macs and 3 large Cokes. My intuition has been wrong. When she pulled up to pay for her meal, she was completely alone. I was honestly a little startled. Why would this lady be ordering this much food and screaming in her car if she was alone? I couldn't wrap my head around the situation. She was otherwise polite. She was nice as she spoke to me and paid for her food and left. She even told me to have a good night. She'd been the only customer we had in probably a 45-minute window. And after she left, I saw some of my coworkers laughing at me. I asked them what was so funny. One of them told me that was my first encounter with Schizo Susan. They told me that she regularly did stuff like this and always showed up at all hours of the night to order seemingly too much food. She was always yelling at people in her car, but there was never anyone actually in there. They didn't actually know her name, so they just called her Schizo Susan. They told me that there were occasional nights when she was the only customer to come through the drive-thru at all. I found it extremely unnerving. I immediately started wondering what was wrong with this woman. About a week went by. She came in every night just like they said, and in between speaking to me to order her food and picking up her food, she was always yelling at someone. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know what was up, so I formulated a plan. I was just going to ask her who she was speaking to. Play it off like I thought she was talking to me. It was the best thing I could think of at the time. I remember it being a Friday night when I decided I was going to do it. I had chickened out a couple of times, but figured that since I don't work the weekends, may as well try something new to end my last shift for the week. Well, the night I did it, I listened into her screaming for a few more seconds than I normally did. You see, I can listen to what people are saying through the McDonald's speaker without them necessarily knowing that I'm listening. If I don't say anything, they would never know. I normally never did this because it's kind of frowned upon. I'm pretty sure there's some kind of rule against it, but I listened for maybe 20 or 30 seconds. I listened for long enough to know that she was yelling at someone named Darian. When she was in the middle of saying something, I interrupted her and said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, were you speaking to me?" She just replied, "No." Shit, I thought to myself. I knew that I had to try something else. I asked her if Darian would be ordering with her. Then she went silent. It wasn't an entire minute, but she just didn't say anything. After the second time of asking her if she was still there, she let out a banshee scream. It was the loudest thing I'd ever heard in my life. It really hurt my ears. The McDonald's microphone system is already pretty loud, but when someone screams into it, trust me when I say that it is the most unbearable thing you have ever experienced. I was also surprised at how long she screamed. She had one deep, loud, guttural scream, going for like 30 entire seconds. In the moment I thought, I was scared for my life. I also got really worried that I was going to lose my job. I felt really guilty for asking, like it was my fault for setting her off. In retrospect, I don't think I really did anything horrible to her. Literally just asked her if the person whose name she was screaming just a minute ago was also going to be ordering food. He didn't actually say anything when she screamed. It was just kind of a violent and guttural scream. I was really taken aback there for a minute. How the heck do you even respond to something like that? I asked her if she wanted to continue placing her order, and that was when she just drove away. She really floored it and drove away faster than she should have, and as she drove by, I saw her face looking at me through the window. It must have only been like a split second that I could see her, but I got that one really good look at her. She looked extremely distressed. and as if things couldn't get any weirder, their microphone system stopped working correctly the rest of the night. I think she screamed so loud enough to break something in it. That was hands down the weirdest thing that ever happened to me throughout any job I've ever worked. And this weird lady just disappeared after that. She stopped coming to McDonald's altogether. I asked some of the co-workers how long she'd been stopping by her nightly visits, and they all said that it was for as long as they can remember, which probably meant at least a year. I felt somewhat guilty for pissing this lady off so bad, but I think it is safe to say she probably needs some serious mental help. I haven't worked at McDonald's in a long time, and I don't ever plan on working fast food again. I just hope that wherever that lady ended up, she got the help she desperately needs. Anyone who's ever worked a night shift will tell you that it eventually gets old. I remember being really excited about starting my first night shift job. I thought it would be so cool, like that episode of SpongeBob with the hash sling slasher or something. It was nothing like that at all. In fact, it got plain old repetitive for after a while. I'm a male nurse, and I had been working in a hospital nearby. It was a long commute and extremely unbearable. Once I finished my first contract with the hospital, which was a year, I decided to apply for another job. One that was a little less stressful and disorganized as the hospital. I got a job at a child's psychiatric unit. Working with children with mental illnesses seemed like a really cool job. Maybe cool isn't the right word, but meaningful. The hospital left me with this feeling of trying to save people who were going to die anyway. But with these kids, I could make a real difference that might turn their life around, or find a way to let them cope with whatever was wrong with them. I was all around excited about it. The pay was even higher, which had me really excited too. The only problem was that the only shift available was night shift. The hiring manager told me that there might be a day shift position available within a couple months, and I would be the first one to get it if it opened up, but that was about it. So there I was, helping kids, at night. The only problem was that they were all asleep for the most part. The only time I got to do anything was when one of them woke up and started misbehaving. This very quickly became the most boring job I've ever worked in my life. About a month went by when something moderately frightening happened. It was a night like any other. I was sitting at my desk charting some stuff I'd done with the kids earlier that night. I heard a noise that I didn't quite recognize at first. It sounded like some of the kids were wrestling or something, but as if they were doing it on the bed. I got really anxious as I did not want to go in there and see two mentally handicapped kids having sex. Call me cynical, but that's where my mind went immediately. But when I got in there, I saw something that I don't think I can ever unsee. I turned the light on to see one of the older kids who was trying to smother another one. The kid that was doing the smothering had no previous incident of violent behavior. I didn't personally know these kids well enough because I didn't work during the day, but I knew their cases well enough to know that the kid doing the smothering had bipolar disorder. It was pretty severe, but he had never had a violent outburst like this. It was just so unusual. I immediately pulled him off the other kid, and then he started fighting me. He reached around his own head and punched me in the nose at a weird angle. This kid had to be 11 or 12 years old, and I was honestly surprised at how much force he had behind his punch. He didn't break my nose or anything, but he definitely bloodied it up. My adrenaline kicked in after that, and I was able to restrain him without a problem. I called for a nurse from another unit in the building to come over and help me. It felt like I was waiting forever for the other nurse, but she got over within a few minutes. The entire time I was waiting, though, I couldn't help but look at this little kid who had nearly murdered another kid. When the other nurse got over, we gave him some medication that would knock him out and put him to sleep. I asked the other nurse, Carla, what was I supposed to do? She was there for a few years before me, and I assumed she had a good answer. We just did everything you can do. Violent outbursts don't get kids thrown out of here. I was a little shocked. I argued with her a little, but that was that. I tried talking to the kid that was being smothered, and he didn't have a whole lot to say about it. He said that he didn't really know the other kid that well, but they had never had a negative incident up until that night. This was a few years back now, and I cannot ever forget how I almost watched that kid die. If I had been just a few minutes later, he probably would be dead right now. It wasn't long after that experience that I started looking for another job. I got one a few weeks later and did my best to explain the situation to my case manager. She didn't seem to understand or care, but that's not my problem anymore.